A 2023 survey by the American Psychological Association found that 74% of employed adults said they had a solid emergency plan if they lost their income tomorrow. They described it with confidence. They had a number in their head, a mental image of how they would manage, a quiet internal reassurance that they were not like the people who struggled. But here's the thing. When those same people actually lost their jobs, over 60% said their plan completely fell apart within the first 6 weeks. Not because the plan was bad on paper. Because the reality of job loss in 2026 carries costs that no plan accounts for, costs that are invisible until the income stops. Today I am breaking down the exact numbers behind what job loss really costs you in 2026, and most of it never shows up in your bank account. The number everyone throws around when they talk about financial stability is median household income. In 2024, that number was $80,610, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. That is the number cited in articles, used in political speeches, referenced in budget discussions. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like a livable number. It sounds like a floor that most people are standing on. But that number is deeply misleading in 3 specific ways that almost no one explains. First, it is the median, not the average. Half of all households earn less than $80,610. That means if you are earning exactly the median, you are at the precise midpoint of the country. You are not comfortably above it. You are not in the safe zone. You are at the line where half the country earns more and half earns less. Second, it does not account for where you live. That $80,610 means something completely different in rural Kentucky versus downtown Austin versus coastal California. The Bureau of Labor Statistics Cost of Living Index from 2024 shows cost differentials of up to 60% between the lowest and highest cost metropolitan areas in the United States. The same income produces a radically different standard of living depending on geography. Third, and this is the one that matters most for this conversation, it does not account for inflation erosion. With inflation running at 3.4% in early 2025 per the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the purchasing power of that $80,610 median income in 2024 is equivalent to roughly what $68,000 purchased in 2019. In 5 years, the median income has grown by a number. Its real-world buying power has not kept pace. A shrinking dollar bill graphic showing inflation pressing down on purchasing power. If you were earning somewhere near the median before you lost your job, you are not living comfortably. You are already stretched across a tighter margin than the headline number suggests. And here's the point that matters most. The hidden costs of job loss do not care what you were earning. They hit the person earning $45,000 and the person earning $145,000 through the same fundamental mechanism. The scale changes. The sequence does not. Understanding that sequence, exactly how job loss costs you in ways that are invisible until they are not, is what this video is about. Here is the first threshold that people never think about until it is too late. To be in the top 10% of individual earners in the United States, you need to earn at least $153,000 per year, according to IRS Statistics of Income data from 2023. For households, meaning 2 earners combined, that threshold sits at around $212,000. Most people hear that number and assume that the people earning it are financially secure, that they have buffers. That job loss for them is a temporary inconvenience rather than a financial emergency. Picture someone living at that threshold. They own a home in a mid-sized city. They are still financing the mortgage. They drive a late-model car, also financed. They take 1 or 2 vacations per year. Their kids are in organized sports, music lessons, or private tutoring. They have a 401k they contribute to automatically and have not consciously reviewed in 8 or 9 months. They eat out regularly. They have subscriptions they have forgotten about. They have a cleaner who comes twice a month. From the outside, this looks like financial success. And by the numbers, top 10% of individual earners in the entire country, it is. But here's the paradox. Despite being in the top 10% of all earners in the United States, a 2024 report by Bankrate found that most households at this income level carry less than 3 months of true liquid savings. Not 3 months of expenses, 3 months of their actual monthly burn rate, which at this income level is often $7,000 to $10,000 per month or more. Their income feels necessary, not abundant. Every dollar that arrives has somewhere to go before it lands. The mortgage, the car payments, the private school fees, the credit card that gets paid in full most months, but not always. The income feels like the precise amount required to sustain the life built around it, because it is. The lifestyle grew to fill the income almost exactly. So when that income stops, not if, when, the clock starts immediately. And it starts at a pace that surprises people who thought they were well above the line of financial vulnerability. I want to tell you about a specific type of person this happens to more than any other. The dual income household at the top 10% threshold, where one partner loses their job unexpectedly. Their household income drops from $212,000 to $106,000 overnight, still well above the national median, still in the top 30% of earners, and yet within 3 months, they are pulling from savings, adjusting the mortgage payment timeline, having conversations about the kids' activities that feel uncomfortable and unfamiliar. Because the life was built for 2 incomes. And lives built for 2 incomes do not run gracefully on one. Now, here is the question I want you to hold. Does earning in the top 10% actually make you financially resilient, or does it simply make you expensive to maintain? The top 5% sits higher, and the picture gets more specific. Individual earners need roughly $250,000 per year to clear that threshold, again per ears filing data from 2023. At this level, you start seeing a distinct mix of professionals. Senior corporate executives in the $180,000 to $280,000 base salary range, often with bonuses on top. Dual income households, where both partners are working in medicine, law, finance, or technology at mid to senior career stages. Business owners in their prime operating years. A small group of highly skilled tradespeople and contractors who built something that scales beyond their own labor. These are people who, by any reasonable cultural definition, are doing extremely well. And here's the regional data point that stops most people cold. In cities like San Francisco, New York, Seattle, or Boston, a household earning $250,000 is functionally considered middle class by many local economic measures. According to a 2024 analysis by SmartAsset, a household earning $300,000 in San Francisco, after state and federal taxes, healthcare costs, and average housing expense in that market, retains approximately $84,000 in annual discretionary income, $84,000 of actual spending flexibility. In a city where the median rent for a 2-bedroom apartment exceeded $3,200 per month in 2024, according to Zillow data. That same $300,000 household income in Memphis, Tennessee, retains significantly more. Because the tax burden is lower, housing costs are a fraction, and the cost structure of daily life is compressed. Same income. Completely different financial reality. Geography is the first variable people ignore when they calculate their vulnerability to job loss. And it is one of the most consequential. Now here's the partial answer to the question I raised earlier. Earning in the top 5% gives you more runway when income stops. Typically 3 to 6 months more runway than the median household, sometimes longer depending on how aggressively that income was saved versus spent, but it does not give you immunity. Because the lifestyle constructed around a top 5% income tends to cost a top 5% income to maintain. And here's the question that opens the next layer. If income is not the right measure of financial resilience, what is? The top 1% of individual earners need at least $785,000 per year, according to Economic Policy Institute data from 2023. That number has moved significantly upward. In 2018, the top 1% threshold sat closer to $560,000. In 5 years, the entry point rose by roughly $225,000. The threshold is not static. It is a moving target accelerating away from the rest of the income distribution. Take a specific household, a neurosurgeon married to a senior corporate attorney. Combined income well above $900,000. They are comfortably inside the top 1% of household incomes in the United States. They are also, almost certainly, still trading hours for dollars. Every dollar of that income requires their continued presence, their continued health, their continued professional license and reputation, and their continued capacity to perform at the level that generates it. The neurosurgeon cannot operate without their hands, their focus, their license. The attorney cannot bill without their hours. The moment either of them cannot work through illness, injury, burnout, or layoff in the attorney's case, the income does not pause. It stops. And the life built around $900,000 in household income does not pause either. It continues to cost what it cost the day before the income disappeared. There is a deeper truth underneath this that the income picture alone cannot show you. Almost everyone at the top 1% of earned income is still, in the strictest sense, a highly paid employee of their own labor. They have not built assets that generate income independent of their presence. They have built a very high-paying job. And a job, at any income level, is something that can be taken. The real picture of financial resilience is not in the income column. It is somewhere else entirely. And that is where we need to go. Stop here for a moment, because what I am about to cover is the part that most financial content on job loss completely skips over. Every article, every podcast episode, every career advice video talks about income when they discuss job loss. How much you are earning, how long your severance lasts, how quickly you can update your resume and get back to the same number or higher. But there is a second number. A quieter number, a number that does not appear on your pay stub or your LinkedIn profile or your tax return in an obvious way. A number that determines whether job loss is a temporary setback that you manage through with your life largely intact, or a financial disruption that takes 2, 3, 4 years to fully recover from. That number is your net worth, and for most people, including people earning very well, it is almost nothing like what they assume it to be. Stay with this. The average American household net worth, according to the Federal Reserve's 2023 Survey of Consumer Finances, is approximately $1.06 million. That is the number that gets published. That is the number that sounds impressive. That is the number that, if you have ever read it, probably made you feel slightly behind schedule. It should not. And here is exactly why. The average is destroyed by the ultra-wealthy sitting at the extreme top of the distribution. A handful of households with net worths in the hundreds of millions or billions pull the average upward in a way that makes it meaningless as a description of the typical American household. The median net worth, the number that actually represents the person exactly in the middle of the distribution, is $192,700 according to the same Federal Reserve data. Roughly 1/5 of the average, and of that $192,700, the Federal Reserve data shows that for the typical American household, more than 60% is locked inside their primary residence. Home equity. That is illiquid. You cannot pay your rent or your mortgage with home equity. You cannot buy groceries with the appreciated value of your property. You cannot pay your car insurance or your utility bills with what your house is worth. Home equity has real value, but it is not available to you in a job loss scenario without either selling the home or taking on debt against it. Neither of those is a simple or fast process. Strip out the home equity. Now strip out the retirement accounts, the 401k, the IRA, the pension, if you are lucky enough to have one. These accounts cannot be accessed without significant tax penalties before age 59 and a half. And a job loss at 38 or 44 or 51, that money is effectively locked. What is left? An actual, liquid, accessible, spendable money. For the median American household, the answer is well under $30,000, often significantly less. Now break that net worth figure down by age, because the progression here matters. Households under 35 have a median net worth of approximately $39,000, per the Federal Reserve survey. Most of that is in retirement accounts already started, a small amount in savings, and very little home equity for those who have managed to buy in this market. Between 35 and 44, the median rises to around $135,000. Home equity begins to constitute a larger share. Retirement accounts have had more time to compound, but liquid savings, the money that actually defends you in a job loss, is still typically measured in months of expenses, not years. Between 45 and 54, median net worth reaches roughly $247,000. At this stage, people are often at their peak earning years, their home has appreciated, and their retirement account has a meaningful balance. But they also have their highest household expenses, children, peak lifestyle costs, possibly supporting aging parents. By 65 to 74, the median sits near $410,000. The wealth is there in aggregate, but even at retirement age, the majority of it remains in illiquid form: the house, the retirement accounts, the pension. Wealth is not earned in a salary spike. It is accumulated, slowly and consistently, across decades of behavior that most people never systematically undertake, because they are too focused on growing their income to focus on what their income actually produces. Let me give you the clearest human example of this distinction. Picture a retired school teacher. She spent 32 years in public education. Her peak salary was $71,000 per year. She consistently contributed to her pension. She paid off her modest home in 18 years instead of 30 by making slightly larger payments when she could. She never leased a car. She never inflated her lifestyle significantly when she got small salary increases. She took vacations, lived a full life, but she never let her spending quietly expand to fill every dollar she earned. At retirement, she carries no debt. Her home is fully paid. Her pension provides a guaranteed monthly income that covers her essential expenses. She has $180,000 in accessible savings. And her financial anxiety, by every measure she would describe, is extremely low. Now picture a 38-year-old marketing director at a technology company. He earns $190,000 per year. By income, he is in the top 10% of individual earners in the United States. He leases a vehicle. He carries approximately $40,000 in credit card debt that he manages rather than eliminates. He has a 401k with around $95,000 in it that he contributes to, but has not actively managed. He has roughly $22,000 in savings. His monthly expenses, mortgage, lease, credit card minimums, subscriptions, lifestyle costs, run to approximately $9,500 per month. His runway if he loses his job today? Just over 2 months of liquid savings before things start to break down. 2 months before he begins making decisions he does not want to make. The teacher is more financially resilient than the marketing director by an enormous margin. Not because she earned more, because she understood, consciously or not, that income is what you earn and net worth is what you keep. And when the income stops, the only number that matters is the second one. Completely out of the American frame, the United States ranks third globally in median wealth per adult, behind Switzerland and Australia, according to the Credit Suisse Global Wealth Report 2023. The median wealth per adult in the United States sits at approximately $107,000. Switzerland's median is around $168,000. Australia's is approximately $150,000. Globally, across every country in the world, the median wealth per adult is roughly $8,654. According to the same Credit Suisse report, approximately 53% of all adults worldwide have a total net worth below $10,000. More than half the planet's adult population. If you are watching this video, you are almost certainly in the upper half of global wealth distribution. And depending on your assets and location, you may be in the upper quarter or upper fifth. This is not a reason to feel guilty about the financial stress that job loss creates. It is not a dismissal of how real and serious that stress feels. It is a reason to feel something more useful than guilt or anxiety. It is a reason to feel clarity. Because if losing your job in 2026 feels like falling off a cliff, it is not because you are poor by any global standard. You almost certainly are not. It is because of something else. Something the wealth data does not measure. something that operates in the space between the numbers and the way the numbers feel. Here is what the data cannot capture. The feeling. You do not measure your financial position against a global distribution chart. You measure it against the people you can see. The neighborhood you live in sets an ambient standard for what a normal life looks like. Your social circle, your colleagues, your school community, they collectively define what normal spending, normal vacations, normal cars, and normal kitchen renovations look like. And that standard is the one you are always, quietly, measuring yourself against. Psychologists call this reference group bias, and it is one of the most powerful and least discussed drivers of financial behavior and financial anxiety in developed economies. Your neighbor just bought a new truck, a $65,000 truck, financed over 7 years because the monthly payment felt manageable. Your colleague just came back from 2 weeks in Portugal and posted photos every day. Your university friend just shared pictures of the lake house they bought with their partner, a second property, 40 minutes from the city. Your coworker's kids just started at the private school across town. None of that affects your actual financial position. Not a single one of those purchases or choices changes what is in your bank account or your retirement fund or your home equity. But every single one of them affects how your financial position feels, because they each quietly recalibrate what normal looks like, and if you are not keeping pace with that visible standard, something starts to feel wrong even when your numbers are objectively fine. Now add job loss to that environment. When you lose your job in 2026, you do not just lose an income. You lose your place in the reference group. You lose the visible signals of stability, the car, the vacations, the restaurant dinners, the confident way you talk about work and career and the future that you have spent years accumulating and maintaining. You lose the ability to participate at the level you have trained yourself to participate at, and that loss, before the financial pressure even fully arrives, hits the identity, the sense of who you are and where you belong. This is the hidden cost that nobody talks about. It is not the lost salary. It is not the depleted savings account. It is the identity erosion that begins the moment you update your LinkedIn from the company you built your self-concept around to the word that nobody wants to put there. Seeking new opportunities. Open to work. It is the invitations you start declining because you cannot afford them and you do not want to explain why. The conversations about work you learn to redirect or shorten. The social events where someone asks what you are up to and you navigate the answer with a care you never needed before. That cost does not appear on a spreadsheet. It does not show up in financial planning models or emergency fund calculators. But it accumulates faster than debt. And for many people who go through job loss in 2026, it is the cost that takes longest to recover from. Longer than the financial gap itself. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Vocational Behavior found that among adults who experienced involuntary job loss, the average time to fully restore pre-job loss levels of self-esteem and professional identity was 14 months, even among those who found comparable employment within 90 days. The financial recovery happened faster than the psychological one for most participants. Job loss in 2026 is not just a financial event, it is an identity event. And the preparation most people do or do not do addresses only the financial dimension. Here is what makes the 2026 job loss environment specifically different from any previous decade. The speed of displacement has accelerated dramatically. A 2024 World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report estimated that 23% of all jobs globally will experience significant disruption within the next 5 years, either eliminated, substantially restructured, or requiring completely different skill sets than they currently demand. The industries being disrupted are no longer limited to manufacturing and routine administrative work. They now include mid-level knowledge work, certain professional services, content creation, entry to mid-level analysis, and customer-facing roles across multiple industries. This means that in 2026, job loss is increasingly not a signal that the individual failed. It is increasingly a signal that the role was restructured, automated, or eliminated in a restructuring driven by forces entirely outside the individual's performance or value. That distinction matters enormously for the psychological dimension we just discussed, but it does not change the financial mechanics. The mortgage does not care whether you were laid off because of performance or because your entire department was absorbed into an AI workflow. The car payment does not pause while you recalibrate. And there is a second 2026 specific factor that changes the job loss calculus. The remote work normalization of the past several years has expanded the labor pool for most knowledge work positions significantly. Where a mid-level marketing manager in Chicago once competed with other Chicago-based professionals for similar roles, they now frequently compete with qualified candidates from across the country and sometimes internationally. According to a 2024 LinkedIn workforce report, the average number of applicants per professional job posting increased by 41% between 2021 and 2024. More competition. Longer search timelines, more time in the gap between income stopping and income resuming. The financial runway that job loss requires in 2026 is longer than it was in 2019. The job search duration has extended, the income replacement timeline has stretched, and the liquid savings that most households carry has not grown at a rate that matches that extension. This is the arithmetic that makes 2026 job loss a genuinely different financial event than it was for the previous generation. Not catastrophically different, but meaningfully different in ways that require a different level of preparation. So here's where every thread closes. Most people significantly overestimate their financial resilience before job loss hits. They have a plan in their head that has never been pressure tested against real numbers. Their liquid savings are thinner than they think. Their net worth is largely locked in illiquid assets, the home, the retirement account, the equity that cannot be spent without significant friction or cost. And their sense of stability is, in large part, psychological, maintained by the income stream, the professional identity, and the visible signals of participation in their reference group. The income thresholds we covered, top 10%, top 5%, top 1%, offer more runway when that income stops. They do not offer immunity. Because the lifestyle constructed around each income level tends to cost that income level to maintain. The spending expands to fill the earning. And when the earning disappears, the spending does not immediately contract to match. The 2026 job market adds additional friction, longer search timelines, more competition per role, faster changing skill requirements. That means the financial gap between losing income and replacing income is wider than most people's emergency fund is designed to bridge. The hidden costs, the identity erosion, the reference group displacement, the psychological recovery that runs 14 months even when the financial recovery runs 3, are the costs that the standard advice does not address. Because they are not visible until you are inside them. The one thing you can do right now, not next week, not after you review your budget, right now, is calculate your actual runway. Take your total liquid savings. Money that is accessible without penalty, without selling anything, without taking on debt. Divide that number by your actual monthly expenses, not a rounded estimate. The real number including everything. The result is the number of months you can survive at your current standard of living with zero income coming in. For most households, that number is between 1 and 4 months. Write it down. Look at it clearly, because that number, not your salary, not your title, not your career trajectory, is your real financial position in a job loss scenario. And once you know it, once you are sitting with that actual number, rather than the comfortable assumption, the question that follows it is the one worth spending real time with. What would you do differently, starting tomorrow, if you knew that number was the only thing standing between your current life and the version of it that job loss creates?